The 2006 Chargers, the greatest one-and-done team in NFL history. A 14-2 record, the number one offense in the league, 11 Pro Bowlers, 5 All-Pros, the single-season touchdown leader at the height of his powers, one of the greatest head coaches in NFL history. And it all amounted to nil. Nothing. It's one of the greatest examples of the Chargers charging, more so than the infamous 2010 Chargers who had the number one offense and the number one defense and missed the playoffs. Today, we're going balls deep into the 2006 San Diego Chargers, the greatest team that never won a playoff game. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and if you want to support this show, check out my coffee company, BenchwarmerBrew.com. Specifically, fitting for this episode, the Loser's Blend. A new blend we dropped on the site. Check it out. Craft roasted, delicious coffee beans. Every order that we fulfill, we make a donation to my page with the Alzheimer's Association. So when you're supporting me, you're also supporting doing good in the world. Now, before we got to 2006, we have to start the story of this particular Chargers team all the way back in 2001. After trading back 5 spots with Atlanta, who took Michael Vick with pick number 1 in the 2001 draft, San Diego drafted running back LaDainian Tomlinson, a versatile back out of TCU. This was back when TCU was best known for producing Sammy Baugh, and not for losing by 58 points in the national championship game. Obviously, the Chargers passed on Mike Vick, but they took a swing with the first pick of the second round and selected Purdue QB Drew Brees, an undersized passer that was still taller than their QB, 39-year-old Doug Flutie. Now, Tomlinson was an instant star for San Diego, but Brees was another story. He threw more picks than touchdowns in his first 2 years as a starter for head coach Marty Schottenheimer, and was bad enough in 2003 that the Chargers held the number 1 overall pick in a QB class that included Ben Roethlisberger, Philip Rivers, and a guy by the name of Eli Manning. Maybe you heard of him.
Fresh off the set.
Now, Manning was the obvious pick for San Diego at 1, but San Diego was not the obvious pick for Eli Manning. In the biggest power play since John Elway spurned the Colts in 1983, Eli Manning rejected the Bolts' advances and forced San Diego to make a swap with the New York Football Giants, who had spent the 4th overall pick on NC State shot putter Philip Rivers, who was already a father of 1 before declaring for the NFL draft. Rivers was the apparent quarterback of the future, but Drew Brees had other plans in year number 4. Aided by a breakout season from second-year undrafted tight end Antonio Gates, who might have played basketball, Drew Brees led the Chargers to a 12-4 record and an AFC West title, earning his first Pro Bowl nod and a playoff date with the New York Jets. The Chargers trailed by 10 points in the 4th quarter, but Brees tied up the game with 11 seconds left in regulation, hitting Antonio Gates for a 1-yard touchdown. In overtime, Brees led the Chargers down the field and set up rookie kicker Nate Kading for a 40-yarder to win it. And nope, he did not. He did not make it. The Jets got their chance and ended the Chargers season. Now, the same components were present for the 2005 Chargers, but the product was less than the sum of their parts. The Chargers had new additions in 6'5" wide receiver Vincent Jackson and 5'6" running back Darren Sproles, but Brees wasn't quite as sharp as he had been a year earlier. To make matters especially complicated, the Chargers still had the 4th overall pick riding the bench, and in Week 17 against Denver, Brees tore his labrum trying to recover his own fumble in the end zone when John Lynch tackled him, opening the door for Philip Rivers. And I've still never heard a Chargers fan thanking me, as a Broncos fan, for ushering in Philip Rivers. Still haven't. Okay, although San Diego offered Breeze $50 million over 5 years, the Saints, with new head coach Sean Payton, offered more and won the services of the man who would quickly become an icon in New Orleans. Remember, the Miami Dolphins could have also had Drew Brees twice. Once in the 2001 draft, and again passed on him in 2006 for a second time, choosing Dante Culpepper instead. Nick Saban was the Dolphins coach at the time and basically set the Dolphins back another decade or so. For the Bolts, they had a damn good backup plan in 25-year-old Philip Rivers, now a father of 3, who was ready to hit the ground running as the unquestioned starter in 2006. And that first year couldn't have gone much better for Rivers and the Chargers offense. San Diego won their first 2 games of 2006 by a 60-point margin. Defensive coordinator Wade Phillips shut out the Raiders on Monday Night Football and held Tennessee to just 7 points a week later. Rivers only needed to throw 11 passes in his first start against Oakland and was aided by a dominant duo of ball carriers. LT and Michael Turner, a human bowling ball that actually averaged a full yard more per carry than Tomlinson in 2006. Throw in Darren Sproles and veteran fullback Lorenzo Neal, and you had a running back room that would go on to rack up a combined 14 Pro Bowls. They were like that 4-headed dragon meme, except they were all the cool, vicious dragon. Unfortunately, San Diego didn't have Sproles at their disposal after he broke his ankle and was forced to sit in 2006, but I'm not sure how they would have found snaps for him given they already ran the ball a staggering 522 times that season. The only other team that ran the ball more was the Falcons, and that's the year Mike Vick became the first QB to hit 1,000 yards on the ground. Sproles, though, returning punts and kicks, may have been the difference that season for the Chargers had he been healthy. Now, Philip Rivers was not the same dual threat that Vick was. Both great passers, but Vick, of course, chose to end animal life while Rivers created human life at an alarming rate. That's how they were dual threats. Anyway, Rivers had an innate sense of awareness in the pocket and a knack for making clutch throws and annoying officials into submission. Rivers was absolutely deadly coming from behind, which is ironic because that's definitely not how you become a father of 9.
No contraception.
Now, Rivers' best game in 2006 may have been a shootout in Cincinnati where the Chargers once trailed 28-7. Philly Rivs used every weapon at his disposal to make up ground and keep pace with Carson Palmer. Rivers hit big plays to Gates, Jackson, Eric Parker, Malcolm Floyd, 36-year-old Keenan McCardell, and big tight end Brandon Manu Maluana, who caught 2 touchdowns in the comeback, including the one that sealed the victory for San Diego. Rivers was just as stellar, erasing a 17-point deficit in Denver a week later, and in a late-season showdown with the defending NFC champ Seattle Seahawks, Rivers won the game on a 37-yard touchdown pass to Vincent Jackson with just 29 seconds left in the game. For a brash shit-talker who actually would never say the word shit because he refused to swear, Rivers knew how to back it up when it counted. Dookie! Rivers earned a trip to the Pro Bowl, but let's be honest, that team made life pretty easy on young Philly Rivs. Let's take a look at the defense, okay? The Bolts fielded a solid secondary, good safeties in Terrence Keel and Marlon McCree, plus 3 strong corners in a young Quentin Jammer, Drayton Florence, and rookie first-round pick Antonio Cromartie, who is in a nuclear arms race in terms of human reproduction with his QB. People forget this, but Cromartie actually has more kids than Philip Rivers. And those 2 guys were on the same team. But that defense was so good because of what they had up front. Jamal Williams. No, not the Jamal Williams who scored all the 1-yard touchdowns for Detroit last year. This Jamal Williams was a force of nature in the middle of the defense, a game wrecker who earned all-pro honors, but their edge was even deadlier. Shaun Phillips, that's 3 Phillips on the Chargers, by the way, when you count Rivers and Wade, had 11.5 sacks. But all the shine was on second-year linebacker Shaun Lights Out Marriman, who notched 17 sacks in just 12 games. And you knew when this man got a sack because he commemorated all 17 of them with this patented lights out dance, the most obnoxious celebration in sports history, and a waste of electricity that not even Chargers ever fully supported. Now, once Von Miller came around and started perfecting the post-sack celebration, he made Shaun Marriman look like Elaine from Seinfeld, if she were also having a seizure while she danced.
It's more like a full-body dry heave.
Now, Marriman was just another All-Pro, but the main attraction for the Chargers was the most dominant player in all of football that season, LaDainian Tomlinson. Let's give some context to what Tomlinson did in 2006, okay? In 2003, Chiefs running back Priest Holmes broke the single-season touchdown record when he scored 27 touchdowns all on the ground. Now, that record didn't last for long because 2 years later, Seattle Seahawks back Shaun Alexander scored 28, just one of those receiving. That record was even more short-lived because LT then broke the record, and he only needed 13 games to do it. Tomlinson was a force at the goal line, scoring 15 of those touchdowns inside the 5. He basically walked so Jamal Williams could run, but LT would also take over games, scoring touchdowns in bunches. He was a threat catching the ball. In 3 different games, Tomlinson scored 4 touchdowns, including 8 in the span of 2 weeks in those comebacks against Cincinnati and Denver. When Tomlinson broke the record in Week 13 against the Broncos, it felt like he could have hit 40 touchdowns if he really wanted to. But the Chargers were already comfortably leading the AFC, and Tomlinson scored a very casual 31 TDs. A Baskin-Robbins-worthy spread of tutties. Except as a Broncos fan, I felt like every one of those 31 flavors tasted like shit.
What were you basing that on?
And do you want to know who's gotten the closest to breaking the touchdown record in the 17 seasons since? Randy Moss, who caught 23 touchdowns a year later. In 2007, he set a receiving record, and he still was 8 touchdowns short of Tomlinson's total TD production. By the end of the regular season, the Chargers had locked up the 1 seed in the AFC and finished 14-2, best in the NFL. After starting 4-2 with those 2 losses coming by a combined 6 points, San Diego finished out the season on a 10-game tear. And 06, by the way, was the only time the Chargers have ever had a 14-win season. Now, perhaps they had forgotten what it was like to face real adversity. After relaxing during the wildcard round, the 1 seed Chargers drew one of the toughest opponents you could get in the divisional round, the New England Patriots. At that point in time, Tom Brady was a near-perfect 11-1 in the postseason. That 1 loss had come a year prior in Denver. That's not really relevant, except I wanted to say that my friend Jake Plummer beat Tom Brady in the playoffs that one time, and it was glorious. More than the players on the field, you had 2 all-time coaches facing off, Marty Schottenheimer and Bill Belichick. Schottenheimer had, of course, taken the Browns to 2 AFC Championship games back in the 80s, coming heartbreakingly close both times as his team fell short to John Elway in games known as the Drive and the Fumble. Schottenheimer later coached the Chiefs for a decade, but fell short every time in the playoffs, amassing a postseason record of 3-7 in Kansas City. Now, Belichick also got his start as a head coach in Cleveland, but his playoff fortune couldn't have been further from Marty Schottenheimer's. He and Tom Brady won 3 Super Bowls in their first 5 years as Patriots, playing a style of football not unlike Schottenheimer's infamous Marty Ball. But for this matchup, it was unseasonably cold that day in San Diego, with temperatures dropping as low as 65. Nearly unheard of in that region.
Compare that to 48 degrees in the upper northwest and 38 degrees in the Middle East.
Okay, I'm kidding. It actually got down to 30 in San Diego. After New England opened with the field goal, San Diego took the lead the best way they knew how, giving the football to LT and Michael Turner, who each scored to make it a 14-3 game just before the 2-minute warning heading into half. San Diego, though, could not cover Jabbar Gaffney, of all people, and Brady snuck in a touchdown just before halftime, cutting the lead to 4 at the break. Now, New England's momentum was broken by a Brady pick, his second of the game, and midway through the fourth quarter, LaDainian Tomlinson's second touchdown made it an 8-point game. The Chargers had the Patriots on the ropes, but New England had the ball and one more chance to get back in the game. And on fourth down at the San Diego 41-yard line, that's when everything changed. A classic example of an all-time great play turning into an all-time gaff, or as I call it, a Jabbar. If Marlon McCree just bats the ball down, the Chargers likely win. If he picks it off and goes down immediately, the Chargers likely win. But Troy Brown gave the Patriots a second life by stripping it away, and they took advantage of that crucial mistake. When you Google Marlon McCree, the first suggested word to follow is fumble, and it's because of this play. After New England tied the game on a touchdown in a direct snap extra point, the same play they had used 3 years earlier in the Super Bowl against the Panthers, and then again in Super Bowl 51 when they came back against the Falcons, the normally clutch Philip Rivers could not move the ball, and the Patriots had plenty of time to drive down the field again and set up a Stephen Gostkowski field goal. Philip Rivers still had a little over a minute, and this time he was moving. A minute feels like an eternity now in the NFL, but in 2006, offenses couldn't just score at will, especially against a tough Patriots defense. But Rivers was able to set up a 54-yarder for Nate Kading to potentially tie the game and send it into OT. The same Nate Kading that missed in this stadium 2 years prior in the playoffs against the Jets. He was a Pro Bowler in 2006. He missed just 3 field goals all year long, and this was number fucking 4. Kading goes wide right. Kading was wide right, like Philip Rivers' political leanings, and just like he had been against the Jets a couple years before. Curse of the Kading, as it's known in the ports of San Diego. 14-2. The 1 seed, the most dominant team in the NFL that year. It was all over. It was the first time the Chargers had the number 1 scoring offense since the 80s, since they had Dan Fouts. Their defense was 7th in points allowed, and Wade Phillips' defenses are always opportunistic. It's one of the all-time wasted teams. People point to the 2010 team of the Chargers with the number 1 offense and the number 1 defense, but that's misleading because that was just in yards. Their D that season was 10th in scoring and the offense 2nd. So in my opinion, this 06 team is the real tragedy. During the post-game handshake, a couple Patriots started doing the lights-out dance midfield, causing the league MVP, LT, to go after a few pats.
That's disrespectful to me, and I can't sit there and watch that. And so, yeah, I was very upset.
Maybe Tomlinson was so frustrated because he only touched the ball 5 times in the fourth quarter. Michael Turner was averaging 8 yards a carry, but only saw the football 3 times all game. Instead, Marty Schottenheimer went away from Marty Ball the one time he shouldn't have and let Philip Rivers drop back 37 times. He only completed 14 passes. Despite leading for most of the game, the Chargers got away from the formula that won them so many in 2006. Worst of all, Brady won that game with a passer rating of just 57, and he threw 3 picks to his 2 TDs. Regardless of the collapse, you would expect the head coach's job to be safe, given the number 1 seed and the 14-2 record with the first-time starter at quarterback. A coach who won Coach of the Year just 2 years prior. Not the case. Chargers idiot owner Dean Spano sided with GM A.J. Smith, which led to a mass exodus of all their key coaches, which opened the door for the Norv Turner era, which honestly was a fitting hire to continue the sad legacy of Chargering. R.I.P. to that 2006 team. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports Balls Deep episode on the 06 Chargers. If you like these episodes, check out the one on the screen right now. And let me know in the comments which team I should do next.